everyone. My name is Michael Goff, and I'm Principal Product Marketing here at Revenera, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Modernizing Monetization, Making the Move to Recurring Revenue Models. As always, I'm very glad to be joined by my colleague Scott Neiman, Director of Product Management, to share his insights and experience on our topic today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to take a moment to go over a few housekeeping details. First, today's discussion will be roughly 35 to 40 minutes long, and if you have any questions or comments along the way, please just add them to the Q&A tab, and we will try to answer them as we go along or at the end if time allows. And if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you individually after the event. Finally, please be sure to check out our related materials that we've provided in the Handouts tab. And just a heads up, we will be sending you a link to the recording in the next 48 hours or so. So let's get started. We're going to talk today about making the move to recurring revenue models, and specifically the move from a one-time sale of physical goods to a software subscription model. So let's look at the physical product like this tractor. And there are different sizes, different attachments that you can add, but really there's very little differentiation between manufacturers. They all sort of offer the same thing. And there's not a lot of opportunity for those manufacturers to add value just with hardware. It's rare. And I'm sure it's not going to come as a surprise to anyone here today that more and more products that were commodities are now offering new unique value through software. Changes in connectivity, portable computing, and data collection bring new opportunities to add value through software. So tractors that are nearly identical from a hardware perspective can have completely different software-driven functionality, which creates uniqueness and a very different user experience. And with the transition from one-time hardware sales to a software subscription model, there's an opportunity to generate annual recurring revenue, or ARR. So what kind of value are we talking about? So first off, intelligence. Software is what makes dumb devices smart. It allows devices to perform more functions, be configured in more ways, and provide more analysis of the tasks that they perform. From a management perspective, software has also expanded the capability to control devices. Combined with connectivity, software enables remote activation and control of devices, something that was really quite valuable on factory floors, for example, during COVID. From a feature evolution perspective, software allows new functionality to be easily added to existing devices, so you can improve something that the customer already has. And feature evolution is a strong value proposition for end users. They know that they can make the investment, and that subscription that they have is going to continually deliver value to them. It's also going to reduce the number of hardware SKUs that the device vendors need to support. And finally, from a differentiation perspective, software can completely change the user experience, creating differentiation even in near identical hardware products. So again, products as a service are where we're headed as an industry. It's going to drive annual recurring revenue. You're going to move beyond that one-time sale of physical products to a subscription model. Again, by being able to evolve the software that you're delivering into these devices, you're going to provide ongoing value to customers, and subscription licensing gives you that steady stream. So one of the things that we're seeing is that digital transformation is increasingly important for business resiliency. IDC's recent research demonstrates that organizations recognize the importance of turning to digital technologies for business resiliency. So when companies are surveyed and asked, which of the following is your organization going to focus on for future business growth and resilience, the top three responses point to this. 38.5% of respondents said they would be focusing on changing or adapting their existing business model to a digital business. 36.6% said they will create new digital products and services. And 33.5% said they will digitalize their operations. Likewise, we're seeing growth in IoT spending that points to the opportunities that exist in adopting a software-driven subscription model. So IDC expects spending on the IoT to reach $845.9 billion in 2022, this year, which is a 12.2% increase over the $754.3 billion spent in 2021. And this double-digit growth is expected to continue and surpass the 1.1 trillion mark in 2024. And lastly, a stat from IoT Analytics, its State of IoT 2022 report forecasts the number of IoT connected devices growing 18% to 14.4 billion devices globally this year and to 27 billion devices by 2025. So now I'd like to hand things over to Scott to talk specifically about how you can run a successful software business. Scott?
All right, thanks, Michael. Right, so we're going to talk about, to be a successful IoT company, how the software differentiates and what you must be able to do to be a successful software company. And that's where we'll focus today. And we'll take a few examples that we're seeing in the industry with a few customers that we've been working with to give you an idea of what's happening. So let's get into the core competencies that you must master in order to be a successful software company. For business models, we're going to talk a lot about having a monetization technology in order to be able to, enable business models and enforce those business models, move to different billing models, right? There's a lot that can be done in terms of monetization technology and backplane that can use to move into different types of models as you move forward. You have to be able to provide in a secure way updates and feature activation to devices, whether they're connected or disconnected. So the idea by using software as a differentiation, right, you would be able to, for example, deliver security patches to devices or enable new functionality if your customers were to buy additional capacity or whatever the device may have. That should be able to be activated remotely. And software monetization technology can help you with that. And then the key aspect of that is you have to understand your customers. You have to understand your devices. And that's data, right? So the consumption of that information and being able to reconcile that versus your customers and what they've acquired in terms of products and services is extremely important. And we'll talk a lot about data insights and how that's so important to a monetization strategy. One of the things we like to do, though, is take it from the top, so to speak, right? From the whole quote to cash, scenario. So software monetization is an enabler for recurring revenue, and it impacts all stages of the quote to cash process. And so you want all these capabilities to be handled in an automated way while you focus your efforts more on your core competencies and adding unique value to your software and devices. And so if we take a look at each one of these stages, starting with the pricing and packaging, right, you have to have a solution that can create packaging for specific market needs, allow fine-tuning of pricing, and you're going to also use data to make those decisions based on usage insights, right? Being able to gather data from the use of your products and services from your customers also gives you an idea of future packaging and products you might want to deliver to your customers in the future, right? You want to be able to put most of your development effort on where it's being used the most and where it's providing most value for your customers. The quote and deal enables the channel partners to execute software sales and maintain visibility throughout multiple channel tiers. And this is really important, especially for device IoT manufacturers, where many of your sales may be, OEM related, right? In some cases, we're seeing 100% of the sales from IoT manufacturers are actually done through a channel. And to have visibility and what's happening with that channel and who the customers of that channel are, and enabling your channel to be able to service those customers in terms of renewal and so on and so forth is very important. And that has to do with really being able to understand the consumption and usage of those services. Then we get into the contracts and terms. And really for us, it's about using licensing to enforce usage terms. Right, so you may be moving to a recurring revenue model. You may have a subscription for a certain period of time. You want that also to be enforced automatically buy your software on those devices. So having technology that ensures that they are adhering to the contracts and terms of what they bought automatically on the device is very important. And that's really what we get into in terms of licensing in a monetization backplane. Then we get into fulfillment. And fulfillment is really in two areas, right? Fulfillment is actually, I bought this, right, this product and services based upon this specific model. And the fulfillment of that, or the use rights, we call that, is fulfilled by the licensing technology, right? So that when you buy a product, you're using it exactly based upon the different, features and that your customer bought. But it's also the delivery of the actual software, right? And so software delivered through it's very important is that you want to deliver the right software to the customer based upon what they bought. So it's all driven by what we call entitlement-driven software delivery. And then we have to have a record of that, right? So for revenue recognition, anything in terms of licenses or software products that is sent to your end customer, you need to have a record and an audit trail. You have to have that proof of delivery, and that's another key aspect that's maintained. And then we think about in the quote to cash process when we're thinking about monetization. And of course, billing, right? You may have not only just a simple subscription model, but you may have a model in which you want to move to where you're billing on specific meters, right? For example, your customer may be purchasing a certain amount of consumption or capacity per month. But if they go over that capacity or consumption, you want to be able to bill on that, right? Most software suppliers that we're seeing don't cut off their end customer, right? If they go beyond what they've acquired, that's just a bad end customer experience. But they want to continue to allow them to be able to use the software, alert them to a condition where you're saying, okay, you're over your consumption level, and you can only do that if you have the data to understand where they are within the billing cycle, how far they are within their, whatever the meter is that you're billing them against. And so it's not only about billing, but it's also just about use, right? So there may be just use of the software and the device that has nothing to do with billing, right? But you need to be able to understand that, to understand if they're getting value from that software. Because it's very important when the renewal comes up, right? You want to make sure they're getting the value up front, rather than at the end of the subscription cycle when it's too late and they're not going to renew, right? So, that it's very important in these different aspects. There's different parts of the monetization, what we're going to get into, the monetization platform, that is each part of the quote to cash process. And the other things you have to keep in the mind is that, there's hybrid deployment models, right? It's a lot of IoT companies are getting into SaaS, right? These set cloud-based applications that control devices is very critical. And you don't want to have different systems managing your SaaS-based applications and your on-premise applications and your embedded applications, right? A single quote-to-cash system, so the data is collected centrally, so you can have a 360-degree view of your customer, right? Rather than taking different systems that are collecting data, stitching them together, and then trying to figure out your customer's billing and your customer's use. It can be done, but it's much simpler to do, with a single system, single quote-to-cash process, as well as a single kind of monetization platform. So there's some aspects to think about, right? Entitlement management is not just a fancy term about use rights and what your customers bought. It's about fulfillment. It's about using technology to ensure, as they're using the software and services, that they're adhering to the contract terms automatically, right? And not everything's connected, right? We talk a lot about usage in this presentation, and we know not everything's going to be connected and sending stuff through the internet. But a good monetization platform should have ways in which data can be collected remotely, either through SneakerNet or through something sitting within the enterprise that could periodically sync that information, so that you have that data, right? That data is very important, not only for billing, but potentially just the use and insights of that software. Okay, so to give you an example you may be more familiar with, that you've probably read about or you're living in it, is about usage data and really the two different personas that participate in the usage data, right? So from a typical enterprise IoT story about connected devices producing massive amounts of data being analyzed with the goal of improving a process or user experience, that story is usually seen from an end customer perspective, and a lot of times it's manufacturing oriented. So the general flow is you're collecting usage data from devices and it's routed to some IoT platform for analysis. And the analysis yields manufacturing process improvements and, such as managing suppliers' schedules and inventory levels and optimum staffing levels, right? And then it's an ongoing process. Now, that same data is very critical for the IoT vendor, right? So you're using that same data, but with a license-oriented view. And so here the usage data on the bottom flow here is routed to the monetization platform, really to execute, new business models, right? So one of the things that it can be used to execute is insights into your pricing to see if, your products and services are priced to value. So you can understand behavior, you can understand the different components of the device and application that they're using. And, based on your pricing model, it gives you an idea of whether, you're pricing your products based upon the value your customers are getting. So a lot of that data can be used to help make pricing decisions, as well as new feature decisions, as well as provide analytics for potential upsell capability, right? If you see, a certain aspect of your customers using certain functionality of the system, and that lends itself to maybe providing some add-on capabilities or new capacity, right? It's an opportunity for you to push this kind of upsell rather than them having to pull that information from you, right? So the push model, of course, is much more advantageous. So one of the interesting things we like to do at Revenera is to pull our customers, right? And we do this in what's referred to as a monetization monitor. And, based upon the pricing discussion we just had, we came out with this monetization monitor that shows the connection between the visibility into usage and better pricing. And the result is nearly 2/3 of the companies that are good at collecting usage data believe their pricing is aligned with the value they provide. And the bullets on the right-hand side shows the type of data that these companies have the ability to see. And they're using a monetization platform to do that, right? So overall software utilization, right? And basically they can collect data on, the number of times that the software starts or is activated, or even down to the individual feature level that they may be monetizing and doing some collection and analysis there, as well as different trends, since the data is all historical and managed within the monetization system, right? They have that historical data that they can look at across their customers, spanning, different, several years, as well as the actual versions that they may be running of the software, right? It's on-premise software. It's not necessarily the latest software. In some cases, we see that some of the software on certain devices isn't updated, for years, basically because the nature of the device, being, for example, safety critical devices, where there's a lot of testing that has to go on before they can actually send software updates. So very interesting. So bottom line is the companies that have developed usage data collection capabilities have better visibility into their customers and therefore are more confident in their pricing. And so up to this point, we've talked a lot about monetization platform, but really haven't really talked about what it is. And so this is an example of a monetization platform. And one of the key aspects is the middle box labeled entitlement management, right? So that entitlement management system is core to the monetization platform, and it feeds into other systems, right? So on the left-hand side, if you think about the quote to cash process, new orders, new services coming in, typically from an ERP or potentially from a CRM system, those orders are coming in and they're being fulfilled via the entitlement system, right? So via APIs, usually there's integrations with these different, ERPs based upon an order coming in. An entitlement use rights will be established within the entitlement system, and based upon the fulfillment, meaning the potentially license delivered to the end customer as well as the software for the devices. On the right-hand side, the customer would start using that application, right? So it could be a SaaS application, it could be an embedded device application, it could be a software application running on a desktop. Once that technology starts to run, it can communicate with the entitlement system and send all kinds of data, right? Interesting data such as a license was activated or a feature was used. And that data is collected over time, as you can see in the bottom. That is the usage data, right? So if that usage data is being used to bill, you have that data and you could feed that into the billing system that you may be using. If that data is purely for analytics and insights, that data can be reported upon. It could even be integrated into maybe your company is already invested into some BI technology, and it could be fed in through simple, REST and JSON interfaces, or even read directly, via Snowflake data warehouse. So all that information is within the entitlement system as the applications on the right-hand side are consuming, are being used. And you can see here between the entitlement system and what we're calling the licensing system, there could be different technologies, right? We talked about hybrid, right? So not everything is an on-premise application where there's potentially a licensing SDK embedded into it. It could be a very small footprint device where you don't necessarily want to embed an SDK, but maybe you want to use APIs, right? Or REST APIs, you can communicate, information to the entitlement system. Or a SaaS application where you're not embedding any SDK, right? You're basically using APIs to check entitlement use rights to, essentially do what an on-premise application does with licensing, right? Basically checking use rights to see if you have access to certain features and functions, which dictate how the SaaS application runs. Right, so those are the core parts of the entitlement system. The real key here is the data that's collected and how that data is used in order to make decisions, product decisions, billing decisions, or if that data is used in different business models or different pricing models that you want to offer to your end customers. Okay, so let's take a look at some real use cases that we've run across with our customers in the IoT space. And one very interesting one is around what's probably near and dear to everybody is healthcare, right? Is in medical devices. So, and this is still true today, a lot of devices within hospitals, right? When they, MRI machines and breathing machines and a lot of different machines that aren't necessarily connected, right? Some of these machines are safety critical machines. You don't necessarily want them being on the internet to be tampered with, right? However, there's software, right, that's being delivered by these medical device companies, and they want to get into monetization. They want to be able to enable new features and sell different levels of software that enables and controls different functionality on imaging and MRI machines. So typically how that's been done is really sending somebody on site, right, a field technician with physical media, right, that actually has the software to install. And it's up to them to figure out what software should actually run on what device and how to configure that, which oftentimes is not easy, right? It's not an easy case of just installing desktop software. Some of the software has certain, hardware characteristics to it, and you don't want to necessarily install the wrong software on the wrong device. That could cause a lot of different issues. And so it's very manual, overprone, it's expensive. It's expensive. And the one thing that these device manufacturers don't have is visibility to what's going on in those hospitals. They don't know whether the hospital is on the latest version of software approved by the FDA. And that's something they have to worry about because they have no, it's the bill of materials of what's actually on in the hospital. They have to rely on manual means, right, on the service technician. So what we've been seeing over the last several years, which actually started, pre-COVID and has gone through COVID, is a digital transformation in some of these areas, right? And so one of the biggest things is in the area of software delivery, right? And so instead of physical media where a technician has to go in and deliver the software, there's two possibilities here. For devices that can connect in the hospital, the idea was to deliver them in product updates that could be, applied automatically. But in some cases, there's always going to be a technician, right? And especially in some of these more complicated devices. However, what they can do now is actually go into the hospital, log into a portal that gives a view of their entitlements in their software, and know exactly what device gets what software because there's a mapping right inside the portal, and so they know with certainty what software should be installed and what the entitlements are, right? So this has significantly improved the speed of delivery, either automated or through a portal where they can pull the appropriate entitled software, and to minimize the field visits, obviously. And they've been able to maintain SLAs during COVID. It's obviously reduced a lot of different variable costs for them. And it's been a big win moving to a licensing entitlement monetization platform to be able to start enabling this for the healthcare industry. And in the next one, building management, right? And so, in building, you may have seen these or work in a building that has some very sophisticated type building, a centralized administration that could control multiple systems used to manage facilities, lighting, HVAC, and whatnot, right? We've worked with this company to provide, monetization technology to control access to the platform, right? So there's two wins here, essentially. There's the end customer and the actual vendor of the system, right? And so how this model works is basically the end customer, who's the building owner, pretty much, pays a license fee based on the number of building systems, right? So a building system could be a lighting system, it could be an HVAC system, a security system, all different kinds of systems. And that's integrated into this management platform. They have access to it. And one of the things they've done through a portal, right, that basically has a view into their entitlements, what they own, is that they're allowing self-service to these building owners to add new systems and new capabilities on the fly, right? So it's a self-service ordering system, and they can do the ordering on the fly, and through monetization technology, have that information automatically activated on those devices immediately when the new capabilities are bought. So they don't have to wait for new hardware. They don't have to wait for, license keys to be shipped, right? They already have everything. They have the keys, they have the software. They're just enabling new capabilities on the fly. So that was a big win for them, moving to monetization platform to be able to manage this and to provide self-service capabilities to their end customer, making much happier end customers and giving them the flexibility to add capacity. Okay, so software monetization, in getting towards the end here, is one of the things you have to keep in mind is about the models, right? And I'm sure that you are going to have to support many different models. It's just not about subscription or perpetual. You may have to support perpetual for quite some time, right? Especially in IoT device manufacturers, we see a lot of customers. Perpetual is still there, right? And it's going to be there for a long time. But as your customers start transitioning to a subscription model, right, you have to have a technology that's able to fulfill both of those and also move into the future when you want to start doing some consumptive model based upon meters, right? And that's kind of the next phase, right? It could be based upon some use of the product you're billing, or it could be a value, right? It's based upon the value they get. That could be determined by analytics and data, and that could set the price for that customer, right? So you being able to find the right monetization model for your market. And deployment models, that's the other key here, is that whatever you use for a monetization system, don't use more than one. What I mean by that is entitlement system, right? And we see this a lot in the industry, especially for those that are moving from on-prem to SaaS, right? Because they've been doing on-prem for 15, 20 years. They understand the world of on-prem. It's licensing SDKs, it's license keys and whatnot. And that world changes when you go to SaaS, right? At least so people think. And it does to some degree, but the underlying way in which things operate is the same, right? It's not so much about licensing, but it's accessing rights. At the end of the day, it's all driven by use rights, and that's an entitlement system. So having a single entitlement system to control use rights, whether it's on an SDK, on an on-premise application, or whether it's a SaaS application where users are logging in, and based upon that user's role in the organization, they get access to certain rights in the application. It's the same thing. You want to be able to collect the data in a singular place, which is the monetization platform. So you can do the billing, you can do the analytics, you can understand your customers better when it comes time to renew their subscription and seeing if they're actually getting value from the products and services you're selling, right? And that's all about the system capabilities, right? The collection. It's not only about the collection, but understanding, what your customers have installed, right? Being able to provide updates and security patches, providing a better experience, which enables the renewal management capabilities, and the capabilities you really need to execute a successful software business. And this slide I'll just leave up here, and I won't talk about it because Michael already covered it, right? This is about, you as a software company really differentiating based upon adding intelligence to your devices through software, being able to understand information and data and usage collection, being able to manage those devices and turn on and off capabilities on the fly, right? That is really, software is the differentiation that will differentiate you versus your competitors, and it's all enabled through a monetization platform.
Thanks, Scott. That was really good stuff today, and I know a lot of folks are sort of looking initially at making the move from one-time hardware sales into software, but you raised some really interesting points about the evolution of that into consumption models and things like that, and then how important that data becomes both from an operational efficiency perspective, but also understanding, if we're going to use a consumption model, what are the things that we're going to, the metrics that we're going to use, and what should the baselines be. And I would highly recommend anyone who did not attend Soft Summit 2022 this year. We had some great presentations, both from Mark Thomason from IDC and our own Eric Jensen talking about consumption models. So definitely check those out if you're ready to take that next step into moving on into sort of advanced maneuvers in terms of monetizing software from an IoT embedded device perspective. So again, Scott, thanks so much for your expertise and your insights today. It's always great chatting with you and getting your perspective on things. And thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate your time. Hopefully you had a chance to check out some of the related materials we provided in the resource area. in the handout section. Please do let us know if you have any follow-up questions. And keep an eye out for your link to the recording, and look forward to seeing you again soon. So thanks all, and have a great day. Take care.
Take care, everyone.